Stop for a moment. Before you scroll past this, before you tell yourself you'll watch it later, because later is exactly how most people quietly lose their lives. One postponed decision at a time, until an entire decade has slipped by and nothing has actually changed. Ask yourself something honest right now. Not what your family expects of you. Not what your friends think success is supposed to look like. Not the version of you shaped by your worst year or your longest losing streak. Just you, alone with the truth for 30 seconds. Are you becoming the person you actually have the capacity to become? Because somewhere inside you, you already know the answer. You already know there's more discipline in you than you've been using, more courage than you've been showing, more patience, more creativity, more strength than you've been spending. The problem was never whether that potential exists. The problem is that potential means absolutely nothing until the day you decide to use it. This message is built on the philosophy of one of the most influential voices in personal development, Jim Rohn. A man who spent his life teaching that success isn't an accident. It's a result, assembled piece by piece from decisions most people consider too small to matter. Today we're going to walk through that idea slowly, carefully, all the way through. Because if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling behind schedule on a life you never actually scheduled, if you're wondering whether it's too late for you specifically, I want you to stay for this whole thing. By the end, your mornings are going to look different to you. And if any part of what you're about to hear lands close to home, drop a comment and tell me exactly where you are right now in your journey. I read every single one, and I mean that. Let's start with the truth nobody puts on a poster. Your future isn't created by one dramatic decision. No single moment changes everything overnight, no matter what the highlight reels and success stories on your screen try to tell you. Your future is built quietly, in the ordinary 5 seconds when the alarm goes off and you decide, snooze or up. It's built in the hour you had to focus and chose distraction instead, or chose focus instead. It's built in the phone call you avoided, the difficult conversation you finally had, the promise you made to yourself last Tuesday that nobody else on earth was checking on but you. Those moments look small. They are not small. They are the entire architecture of the life you'll be standing inside 5 years from today. Brick by brick, morning by morning. That's the whole blueprint. There is no secret formula hiding somewhere else. It was always going to be built out of exactly these kinds of ordinary hours. Here's what's actually freeing about that truth. If you let it be freeing instead of heavy. You cannot change yesterday. You cannot walk back into the opportunity you let slide past you at 30 or 40 or 50. You cannot rewrite the conversation you handled badly or undo the years you spent coasting on autopilot because coasting felt safer than trying and possibly failing in front of people who were watching. None of that is the point anymore because dwelling there produces nothing. You have something far more useful than a rewritten past. You have today, an entire, unopened, unclaimed today. And today is a door standing wide open, whether you choose to notice it or not. Maybe your life right now doesn't look anything like what you pictured when you were 25. Maybe money is tighter than you'd like anyone to know. Maybe your career feels like it's crawling instead of climbing. Or maybe it's stalled out somewhere you didn't expect, and you've been quietly circling the same spot for longer than you'd admit out loud. Maybe the people closest to you don't fully understand what you're chasing. And maybe that has made you feel a little alone in it. And maybe, if we're being completely honest, you've failed more times than you'd like to count. Hear this clearly, because it matters more than anything else in this video. None of that means the story is finished. Where you're standing right now is not a verdict. It's a coordinate on a map, and coordinates can move. What matters, starting from this exact second, is the direction you choose to walk in next. Two people can experience the identical setback and walk away with completely different lives from it. One person loses a job, or a relationship, or a chance they'd worked years toward, and looks at that failure and decides, this proves I can't do it. This proves people like me don't get to have that. The other person experiences the exact same loss and decides, this is showing me something I still need to learn. This is redirecting me somewhere I couldn't see yet. The event was identical. The internal response wasn't. And that response is the fork in the road that determines everything downstream. Not the event itself, the story you told yourself about the event. Your mind is always interpreting the world around you in real time, whether you're paying attention to it or not. And the story you keep repeating to yourself silently becomes the exact lens you see every future opportunity through. If you wake up every morning quietly telling yourself, I can't, you will move through the day like someone who can't. And you'll find evidence everywhere to confirm it, because your mind is very good at finding what it's already looking for. But if you wake up and tell yourself, this will be hard, and I am someone who can learn my way through hard things, you build an entirely different trajectory starting from that exact sentence. Thought becomes action. Action becomes habit. Habit becomes character. And character, slowly and almost invisibly, becomes your entire life. It's worth pausing here to talk about the specific shape fear tends to take as people get older, because it rarely announces itself the same way it did when you were young. When you're young, fear feels loud and obvious. Fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, fear of looking foolish in front of people your own age. As the years go by, fear gets quieter, but it doesn't disappear. It becomes a kind of settled assumption, a background hum that says, this is simply how my life is now. This is roughly what's left. Better to protect what I have than risk it chasing something new. That quiet version of fear is far more dangerous than the loud kind, precisely because it doesn't feel like fear at all. It feels like realism. It feels like maturity. But very often, it's simply fear that's learned to disguise itself as common sense. The good news is that the same tools that work against loud fear work against quiet fear too. Name it honestly. Take one small action in spite of it. Let the action itself, however small, prove the assumption wrong. This is precisely why real success rarely looks impressive in the actual moment it's happening. People see the finished business and completely miss the 1,000 early mornings that built it in the dark, unglamorous, unseen. They see the calm, confident person standing on a stage and miss the years that same person spent doubting themselves quietly, in private, wondering if they were fooling everyone. They see the polished result and skip right past the enormous pile of ordinary, forgettable decisions that produced it. The gym session nobody applauded, the invoice sent at midnight, the book read instead of the show watched. Every single person who has ever accomplished something worth admiring had mornings where they genuinely wanted to quit. The difference between them and everyone else was never that they felt more motivated on those mornings. The real difference is they stopped waiting around for motivation to arrive before they acted. They built commitment instead, because motivation shows up easily when things feel exciting and new, and discipline is the only thing that shows up reliably when nothing feels exciting at all. If this next part is landing for you, this is exactly the moment to hit like on this video and send it to someone in your life who needs to hear it too, because chances are you already know exactly who that person is. Maybe it's someone who's been stuck in the same place for a while now. Maybe it's someone who needs permission to start over. Send it to them. It might matter more than you think. There will be mornings with zero inspiration in them. Mornings where getting out of bed feels like the entire accomplishment for the day. There will be stretches, sometimes long ones, where your progress is completely invisible even to you, where you're doing all the right things and seeing nothing change on the surface. There will be seasons where your effort seems to be producing absolutely nothing measurable, and it will be tempting to conclude that the effort itself was pointless. That isn't proof you're failing. Very often, it's proof you're being tested in a way that doesn't announce itself. Think about a tree standing in open wind. It doesn't grow strong, deep roots by avoiding the storm season after season. It grows them specifically because of the storm, because the resistance is what forces the roots downward and outward in the first place. Your difficulties can do the exact same work in you, but only if you allow them to teach you something instead of simply letting them wear you down into resignation. Growth genuinely begins the moment you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this here to teach me? That single shift in the question you ask yourself puts you back in the driver's seat. And being in the driver's seat starts with responsibility. The instant you stop quietly handing the blame for your situation over to your circumstances, your upbringing, your bad luck, or other people, you free up an enormous amount of energy that can finally be spent changing the situation instead of explaining it. You can't control where you started in life. You can't control what other people privately think about your goals or your timeline. You can't control every door that opens for someone else and stays shut for you. But you can control your effort today. You can control how you prepare for tomorrow. You can control your attitude in the room you're standing in right now. And you can control the very next decision sitting in front of you. Not next year's decision, not next month's, the one right now. Never underestimate what simple repetition, done without excuses, can eventually build. One workout will not reshape your body, and one honest conversation will not repair years of distance in a relationship. One good morning will not reshape an entire career, but 100 of them, stacked one on top of the other without skipping too many in a row, absolutely will reshape all three. You do not need to overhaul your entire life in a single dramatic weekend. You need to change what you do consistently, starting with tomorrow morning specifically, not someday morning. Read a few pages instead of scrolling. Practice the one skill that would actually move your career forward. Move your body, even briefly, even imperfectly. Get up when you said you would get up, not 20 minutes later. Finish the one task you've been quietly avoiding for weeks because it makes you a little uncomfortable. This is how identity actually changes over time. Not through a single announcement to yourself or to anyone else, but through accumulated evidence. Every single time you follow through on something, when you were tired, distracted, or unmotivated, you prove to yourself, in a way words alone never could, that you are someone who can be trusted to keep their own word. That is where real, durable confidence actually comes from. Not from waiting for it to magically show up one morning, but from constructing it, one kept promise to yourself at a time, brick by brick, the same way everything else worth having gets built. Let's talk about money for a moment, because so much of the anxiety people carry quietly in their chest traces back to it, even when they don't say so out loud. Financial stress has a way of convincing you that the problem is your income, when very often the deeper problem is your relationship with patience. Wealth, real wealth, the kind that lasts and doesn't evaporate the moment circumstances shift, is rarely built through a single lucky break. It's built the same way everything else worth having gets built, through unglamorous, repeated decisions that nobody applauds. The dollar saved instead of spent on impulse. The skill learned on a weekend instead of a weekend wasted. The debt paid down instead of ignored for another month because ignoring it felt easier in the moment. None of those choices feel significant when you make them. But money, like character, compounds. Small decisions, repeated consistently over years, eventually produce results that look almost unbelievable from the outside, even though every single step that built them was completely ordinary. If your finances feel out of control right now, the answer is almost never a single dramatic fix. It's the same answer as everything else in this message. Today's decision, repeated tomorrow, and then again the day after that. The same is true for your health, and this matters more the longer you live, not less. Nobody transforms their body or their energy levels in a single week, no matter what an advertisement promises you. But the walk you take today, even a short one, is doing something. The glass of water instead of the extra coffee, the earlier bedtime instead of one more hour of scrolling, the meal you prepared instead of the one you grabbed without thinking. None of it feels dramatic in the moment. Yet 5 years from now, the person who quietly stacked those choices on top of each other will be living in a completely different body, with completely different energy than the person who waited for motivation to strike before ever starting. Your body, much like your finances and your character, is simply a running total of the decisions you've already made. The good news, the genuinely good news, is that the total is never final until the day you stop adding to it. And then there are your relationships, which deserve the same honest attention as your career or your bank account, even though they rarely get it. It is entirely possible to build an impressive career and a healthy body while quietly neglecting the people who matter most. And many people do exactly that without realizing it until much later. Strong relationships are also built through small, repeated deposits. The phone call you actually make instead of postponing, the apology you offer without waiting to be asked for one, the attention you give someone without your phone in your other hand while they're speaking. None of those moments will ever go viral. None of them will ever be the highlight of your year. But they are, quietly, the entire foundation underneath everything else you're building. Because a successful life that leaves you isolated was never actually the goal to begin with. Let's talk honestly about comparison for a moment, because it quietly destroys more people than failure ever does. Your biggest competition was never the person one step ahead of you online, the neighbor with the newer car, or the classmate who seemed to figure life out faster. Comparing your entire behind-the-scenes story to someone else's carefully edited highlight reel is a losing game before it even starts, because you're not actually seeing their mornings, their doubts, their debts, or their quiet failures. Only the parts they chose to show. Your real competition is the version of you that keeps choosing comfort over growth. The version whispering, tomorrow, I'm not ready yet. What if it doesn't work out and everyone sees? You will hear that voice many times across your life, probably today, possibly within the next hour. You do not have to obey it simply because it's familiar. Courage was never the absence of fear in the first place. Courage is simply the decision to keep moving forward with the fear still sitting right there beside you in the passenger seat, uninvited but along for the ride anyway. You don't need perfect conditions to start. And waiting for them is one of the most convincing excuses the mind ever produces, because it disguises itself as wisdom instead of fear. A ship with an extremely powerful engine and no destination just burns fuel in circles for years, going nowhere, using enormous energy to arrive precisely where it started. Talent without direction slowly turns into confusion. Ambition without discipline turns into frustration and eventually into bitterness, because the gap between what you wanted and what you actually did keeps widening. So don't only ask yourself what you want out of this one life you've been given. Ask yourself something deeper. Who do you need to become in order to actually build it? If you want a stronger career, become someone who never stops learning, even after the promotion, even after 30 years in the field. If you want financial stability instead of financial anxiety, become someone who understands patience and delayed reward better than the culture around you rewards. If you want relationships that actually last, become someone who listens fully, communicates honestly even when it's uncomfortable, and follows through on the small things as reliably as the big ones. If you want a healthier body in the years ahead, become someone who respects it through consistent, unremarkable daily choices rather than dramatic, short-lived pushes. Your goals genuinely matter. But the person you become while chasing them matters even more. Because once a habit becomes part of your identity, you stop debating every single morning whether or not to do the work. You simply become someone who does it. The same automatic way you brush your teeth without negotiating with yourself about it first. There will always be a convenient reason to wait one more week. There will always be someone quietly doubting you, sometimes without saying a word out loud. There will always be a distraction sitting within arm's reach, ready to absorb another hour you'll never get back. But your future does not need another excuse from you. It needs exactly one more action, taken today, however small. Start before you feel completely ready, because that feeling of readiness tends to arrive after you begin, not before. Improve while you're still figuring things out in public, imperfectly, without waiting for expertise that only comes from doing the thing badly first. You don't need to see the entire staircase stretching out in front of you. You only need enough courage for the next visible step. And then, once you're standing on it, enough courage for the one after that. There's another quiet trap worth naming directly. And that's the fear of what other people will think if you actually try, and it doesn't work out. This fear keeps more people frozen than almost anything else, because failing privately feels survivable, but failing where others can see feels unbearable. Here is the truth. Almost nobody tells you about that fear. The people you're most afraid of disappointing are usually far too occupied with their own doubts, their own unfinished goals, and their own quiet anxieties to be tracking yours as closely as you imagine. And the small number of people who would genuinely judge you for trying and falling short were never the people whose opinion should have been steering your life in the first place. The only audience that actually matters over the full length of a life is the person you have to face in the mirror every single morning. Everyone else's opinion is, at best, temporary weather. Your own respect for yourself is the climate you actually have to live in. It also helps to understand that patience is not passive. There's a common misunderstanding that patience means simply waiting quietly for things to happen, sitting still until circumstances improve on their own. Real patience is active. It means continuing to do the right things consistently, especially during the long stretch where you can't yet see any visible proof that they're working. Anyone can stay disciplined for a week when results show up quickly. The real test, the one that actually separates people over the long run, is whether you can keep showing up during the months where nothing seems to be changing on the surface, trusting that the work is still accumulating somewhere beneath what you can currently observe. Farmers understand this better than almost anyone. Nobody plants a seed in the morning and expects a harvest by evening. The season has to run its full course, uninterrupted, before the results become visible. Your goals operate under the exact same law, whether you like it or not. Let's also be honest about time, because it's the one resource nobody gets to negotiate for more of. You cannot buy back a wasted decade at any price, and you cannot borrow tomorrow's hours to make up for today's. That should not create panic. It should create clarity. The years ahead of you are still unwritten, and they will be filled with something regardless of whether you plan for it or not, either with intention or simply with whatever drifted in while you weren't paying attention. The choice was never whether your life gets filled up. It always does. The only real choice is whether you're the one doing the filling. There's also the matter of what you choose to feed your mind, day after day, because that intake shapes you just as much as anything you eat or how you move your body. The conversations you allow into your head, the voices you listen to on your commute, the content you consume in the last 20 minutes before you fall asleep. All of it is quietly training the way you think about your own potential. If the only voices you're absorbing are complaining, cynical, or convinced that nothing ever changes for people like you will eventually start believing that too, even if you never consciously agreed to it. Choose your inputs the way you would choose the ingredients for a meal you actually cared about. Read something that stretches you. Listen to someone who has already walked the road you're trying to walk. Surround your mind with evidence that change is possible, because it is. And because you deserve to be reminded of that regularly, instead of only on the days you happen to stumble across it by accident. Gratitude deserves a place in this conversation too, and not the shallow kind that gets reduced to a slogan on a coffee mug. Real gratitude is not about pretending your circumstances are perfect or that your struggles don't matter. It's about refusing to let what's still missing completely blind you to what's already present and working in your favor. You can want more for your life and still recognize what's already good in it. Those two things are not in conflict, no matter how it might feel some mornings. In fact, people who practice this kind of honest gratitude tend to take more effective action, not less, because they're operating from a place of security instead of scarcity. Desperation makes poor decisions. Gratitude, paired with ambition, tends to make sound ones. And consider, for a moment, the people who are watching you, whether you've noticed them or not. Somewhere in your life, there is very likely a younger person, a child, a niece or nephew, a colleague just starting out, someone who is quietly taking notes on how you handle difficulty, whether you're aware of it or not. The habits you build today are not only shaping your own next decade, they are modeling for someone else what is actually possible when circumstances get hard. That is not meant to add pressure to your shoulders. It's meant to remind you that the discipline you build in private has a way of rippling outward into places you'll never fully see or get credit for. Your consistency becomes, without you ever intending it, someone else's permission to keep going too. One day, likely sooner than it feels possible right now, you'll look back on this exact stretch of your life and realize the entire trajectory pivoted on mornings that felt completely ordinary while they were happening. The morning you finally got serious about the thing you'd been avoiding. The day you stopped quietly blaming your circumstances and started building instead. The moment you decided that the story wasn't finished just because a chapter had gone badly. So tomorrow morning, before the noise of the world gets into your head, before the phone, before the news, before anyone else's opinion of your life reaches you, remind yourself of something simple and true. Your story is still being written right now, in real time. You are not your worst year. You are not your last mistake. You are not permanently the person you happen to be for the last decade. Choose discipline over comfort, especially on the mornings when comfort seems like the obviously easier choice. Choose progress over the exhausting, paralyzing pursuit of perfection, because perfection was never actually the goal. A slightly better version of yesterday always was. Choose to become someone you can genuinely respect when you're alone with your own thoughts at the end of the day, because that respect, once earned honestly, doesn't require anyone else's approval to feel solid. Your future self is already waiting on the decision you make tomorrow morning. and they are counting on you more than you realize. So don't wait for someday. Someday isn't on the calendar, and it never will be. Don't wait to feel completely fearless, because that feeling may never fully arrive for anyone, ever. Begin exactly where you are standing right now, with whatever you currently have in your hands. And if this message meant something real to you today, if you want more of this kind of honest, practical encouragement showing up in your life on a regular basis, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so the next one finds you at exactly the moment you need it, the way this one may have found you today. Because extraordinary lives are almost never built in extraordinary, cinematic moments. They are built quietly, on ordinary days, by someone who simply decided, without applause and without an audience, I will keep going. I will keep learning. I will keep showing up, especially on the mornings I don't feel like it. And I will become the person I already know, deep down, I am capable of being.